there, in this video today I'm going to be going through 7 things that I didn't know were pandas and PANS related. So the first thing is low muscle tone, and this is quite interesting because there isn't much information out there on this, but a friend of mine did say something about low muscle tone being part of pandas and PANS, and I saw an article that said something very similar, and that answered a lot for me because I remember a Tourette's consultant once just saying something about low muscle tone to me. And after my most recent PANS flare, I say most recent, it was almost a year ago now, thankfully, but my residual symptoms, I seem to have episodic loss of muscle tone. And loss of muscle tone, well, muscle tone, first of all, is where your brain sort of sends signals to your body all the time about how much your muscles need to be tense to hold yourself up. So if you have low muscle tone, you'll be quite floppy. That obviously isn't the most professional description of it, but that's basically what it is. And I mean, my episodic loss of muscle tone isn't severe or anything, but it's something I have noticed because most of the time my muscle tone is okay, it's fine, but some days, a lot of my PANS symptoms are episodic, so some days I do just sort of struggle to hold myself up in a way. If I'm sitting doing something, I have to lean against something quite a lot because my posture gets really bad. I get really slouchy and I struggle to hold myself up. And this causes neck aches and sometimes headaches and knots in my back when I try and sit up. Because on these days my body just is no, we can't hold yourself up today properly, because my muscles get a little bit more floppy. And as well as this, when I'm doing college classes, I sit in my dad's chair and kind of wedge myself in the chair and between the table so that I can kind of lean quite a lot to keep myself fully upright. Today my muscle tone is fine, but some days I do just get very, very floppy. But yes, that's something that I've noticed, and I also get really tired sometimes when I have that, so I lie down to do things and stuff just because sitting up is really uncomfortable when your muscle tone is low. But again, thankfully most days it's fine, so yeah. But yes, seizures is another thing that is related to pandas and PANS that I wasn't aware of. Thankfully I don't have these, but when I became friends with others in the PANS community, I found that seizures are quite common, and also I was watching a video about a girl with PANS and she had seizures as well. So yeah, seizures can be part of it, midbrain seizures. The next thing is difficulty with transitions. This, I believe, can occur for a variety of reasons. I've read about that in a book. I believe I have had this one because when I was younger I would, well, first of all, I would sit on the toilet for long periods of time, but that was because I was procrastinating from doing the OCD rituals that exhausted me and took up so much time. But I also, apparently, if somebody asked me to do something, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't go to do it. This could have been part of the oppositional defiance, but it could have also been executive dysfunction, where people may have difficulty starting things. But I just know that when I was younger, I really struggled to do things that people asked me to do. And I still have this a little bit now. Thankfully, again, it's not very much. I'm usually good at moving on to things. I'm usually very motivated, but again, episodically, which most of my symptoms are, I have episodes where I don't really have the motivation to do basic things. This is not part of the depressive symptoms. This is just, I think, an executive dysfunction thing again. Some days I'll wake up and be have to wait before I can actually get out of the bed. I'll be sitting on the toilet and have to wait until I can actually get off, and do these little things because my brain is not sending these sort of motivation signals to do these little things. But yes, one thing that can kind of help me with that is, well, this sounds very strange, but this happens when I have episodes where I go kind of very, very slightly numb, emotionally and physically. You can see pen there. And also have no motivation, so it's very blank and dull. But what helps me in those situations is having a bath or going outside, something that can perk me up a bit, and wake me up a bit, and then I'm completely fine. I can do stuff with a lot of motivation and get stuff done. But that's an interesting thing I've noticed. The difficulty with transitions does seem to be very common in the PANDAS community for a variety of reasons. The next thing is pain. Unfortunately, pain seems quite common in the PANDAS community. An article in the Journal of Child and Adolescent Pharmacology in September 2017 called Clinical Evaluation of Youth with Pediatric Acute Onset Neuropsychiatric Syndrome found that people with PANS do often have different types of pain in many different areas of the body, along with fatigue. The joints can be affected as well. And it does sound quite strange that a neuroimmune disorder can also affect the joints, but this has just been noted in some cases, including my own. When I had my flare at 17, for the first 3 weeks, it was the most severe in the first 3 weeks, but my knees were inflamed for some reason, so the joints can be affected as well in some cases. The next thing is difficulty walking in the mornings, and again, this is one I haven't heard much about, but I was reading a book called Shadow Syndromes, written by any mum, which it was written anonymously, but it was a really good book. I do recommend it. It was a story of a mum telling the story of their son's PANS journey, and I recommend it, but it did mention something about difficulty walking or standing in the mornings, and that made me think, is that what I experienced when I was younger? Because when I was younger, I would sit down to brush my teeth. It seems very lazy, and I probably did just think I was a lazy child. But I remember I was just exhausted all the time. I felt like I couldn't stand up, and that could be down to the fatigue that can be part of PANDAS and PANS. But that sort of thing just made me think, maybe that was actually part of it. So that was very interesting, something I read. The next thing is symptoms getting worse the more you do in a day. I've definitely found this. I heard of this in a This Morning video where a mum and her son were talking about his PANDAS diagnosis, and it helped me to hear that because I knew that the more I did in a day, the worse my symptoms got later on. I found this again in the flare, when I would try and do stuff in the day. I remember I was in the flare, I had 5 assignments due and I could barely do anything. It was fun. But I was trying to do stuff, but then my symptoms would get worse later on. And I do get this now to an extent, but obviously I'm a lot better now, so thankfully not as much. But with the residual symptoms, the more I try and focus in the day, the more I might struggle with hyperactivity and inattention and just fuzziness in my brain and tiredness later on. So yeah, I've noticed that quite a bit. So the more someone with PANS does in a day, sometimes the worst symptoms will be later on. Therefore, people can kind of pace things. People can get extensions on things and get the help that they need to try and prevent the horrible things that can come later on if somebody overworks themselves and kind of overstimulates their brain, and or just having lots of breaks. That can be really helpful. And the last thing is urinary symptoms. I did know about the urinary symptoms before my flare at 17 because I was reading a book about PANDAS when I was 16, because I was always interested in PANDAS, even though I didn't fully think I had it myself. I kind of suspected that I might, even though I still didn't believe it when my mum told me at 17. But the urinary symptoms in PANDAS and PANS can include enuresis, which is where people wet themselves involuntarily. This can occur at night time, which is nocturnal enuresis, but also in the day, and understandably that can be very difficult to deal with. But also an increase in urinary urgency and frequency, so people may feel like they need the toilet more than usual, and it can be very strong. I haven't had the wetting, but I have had bladder tics, which looked like wetting, but they were tics, so that's not the same thing. And I may have slightly had an increase in urinary frequency. There were times when my mum was telling me, like, don't go to the bathroom that much. She didn't realise it wasn't an OCD thing. The urinary symptoms aren't actually an OCD thing. They are, your brain kind of, I'm not sure, maybe it just sends more urinary signals, who knows. But I have had the bit where I go to the toilet more often than usual, but it's not very common. It's just some days I will do that. But yes, urinary symptoms are a big part of it. So if you or someone you know has like suddenly developed OCD or tics or something like that, and then they also have urinary issues, then definitely it's worth looking into PANDAS and PANS. I mean, even if someone develops sudden onset OCD and doesn't have urinary symptoms, it's worth looking into, but that's definitely a big sign of PANDAS and PANS, but not everyone has it. but those who do, it's a big sign. But yes, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I would like you to comment if you can relate to any of this, because it's really good to hear the experiences and perspectives of others in the community. It's really lovely. But yes, I hope you enjoyed this video. Bye bye.